Chosen one. Pause in this very moment. Because the stirring that has just appeared within you is not a meaningless feeling that should be hastily dismissed. Amid the sounds competing for your attention, the work, responsibilities, and countless unfinished matters, a hidden part of you immediately recognized that these words concern the journey you are now walking. You may think that your eyes simply happened to stop here, but for a very long time, I have walked beside you through roads you believed you had to travel alone. I saw you trying to appear normal while you were nearly exhausted within. I saw you smile so that no one would worry. I saw you quietly gather the broken pieces while no one knew what had happened. You carried too much in silence, not because you did not need support, but because you feared that if you put the burden down, everything around you would collapse as well. But now, I want you to understand that you no longer need to prove your strength by enduring everything alone. The nights when you cried without making a sound were never forgotten. The times when you lay still, watching darkness cover the room and wondering why you always had to remain so strong. I was nearer than you realized. I saw every time you forced yourself to rise when something within you wanted only to stop. Every moment you hid fear behind the statement that you were fine. And every prayer that was so brief because you no longer had enough strength to say anything more. You believed the silence around you meant that no one could hear. But not one sincere sigh ever disappeared into emptiness. Some answers did not arrive in the form you expected. Not because you were forgotten, but because I was teaching you to recognize presence not only through spectacular things. Sometimes the answer was the strength you still possessed to make it through a difficult day. Sometimes it was someone unexpectedly asking whether you were all right. At other times, help appeared in the form of a boundary you finally became courageous enough to establish. For so long, you believed you were merely struggling against life, doing whatever was necessary to survive each day. But something deeper was taking place. The times when you sensed instability before something was revealed taught you how to observe. The moments when you recognized sadness in another person's eyes, even while they were smiling, caused your compassion to grow. The times when you entered a place and immediately felt a heaviness in the atmosphere did not necessarily mean that you were required to carry everything present there. They only revealed that you possess a sensitivity that must be used with wisdom. You are not called to become a vessel that holds all the suffering of others. I gave you the ability to perceive so that you might know when to listen, when to pray, when to offer support, and when to step back to protect your peace. A gift without boundaries becomes a burden, and kindness, not guided by awareness, will leave you empty. Some people naturally approach you and tell you things they have never shared with anyone else. There are times when you listen to a story and their pain seems to remain within you longer than it remains with them. You have wondered why you feel so deeply, why your mood may change after one conversation, or why you sometimes become tired merely from remaining too long in an atmosphere filled with tension. I want you to understand that sensitivity is not a sign of weakness. But it also does not mean that every emotion appearing within you belongs to you or carries a mystical meaning. You must learn to distinguish what is genuinely taking place within you from what you may have absorbed unconsciously from your surroundings. When you leave a place and feel heavy, give yourself a quiet space to breathe, rest, and return to the truth. Do not assume responsibility for every emotional change in another person. You can love them without carrying their entire burden for them. I also want you to stop explaining every form of exhaustion through a single cause. Sometimes you are depleted because you have thought for too long, slept too little, worked too much, and denied yourself permission to pause. Sometimes you feel drained because you have remained near people who constantly demand but rarely know how to give. There are also days when what you need is not another attempt to interpret a sign, but simply a nourishing meal, water, time away from a screen, and peaceful sleep. Divine wisdom does not cause you to neglect your genuine needs. I do not ask you to prove faithfulness by exhausting yourself. Caring for your inner life, health, and rhythm of rest is also a way of respecting the gift entrusted to you. If heaviness continues and begins affecting your sleep, work, or ability to function, seek trustworthy help. Receiving the right support does not diminish faith. It reveals that you know how to value yourself. The nights when you suddenly awaken and find your mind crowded with thoughts you cannot yet name are also not reasons for panic. Do not immediately believe that an invisible danger is waiting for you. Sit up calmly, breathe slowly, and listen for what truly needs attention. Perhaps you are concerned about someone, avoiding a decision, or have suppressed grief for too long. If you feel the need to pray, pray from a place of peace. But do not turn prayer into a race against fear. I do not lead you through chaos. Genuine guidance may awaken you, but it will not push you into panic or cause you to lose control. After quieting your heart, write down what you have recognized, and then return to rest. Not every question requires an answer during the night, and not every feeling requires immediate action. You spent too many years believing that strength meant being able to endure without limit. But mature strength also means recognizing your limits before you collapse. You do not always need to be the person who solves everything, rescues everyone, or keeps the entire room calm. Some burdens must be returned to those who own them. Some battles are not your responsibility. There are people you love whom you cannot change through self-sacrifice. I want you to learn to say, I care, but I cannot do another person's part for them. This is not coldness, it is love, guided by wisdom. When you stop carrying what does not belong to you, your energy will no longer be drained by continual worry. You will possess enough strength to be present in the right place, at the right time, with an open heart that is no longer easily swept into another person's confusion. The time has come for you to recognize that your calling is not measured by how much suffering you can endure, but by how you transform what you have experienced into wisdom, compassion, and the ability to guide others back toward peace. You do not need to appear mysterious or prove that you can sense what others cannot see. Your light is revealed through the way you treat the vulnerable. Keep your word when no one is watching. Refuse retaliation even when the opportunity is available. And permit yourself to rest without condemnation. These qualities reveal your depth more truly. Awakening does not separate you from ordinary life. It helps you live more honestly in the midst of ordinary things. Care for someone without controlling them. Listen without losing your own voice. And leave when a place is no longer healthy. I am awakening a new understanding within you. You are seen, but you must also learn to see yourself. Do not wait until you have completely collapsed before admitting that you are tired. Do not offer gentleness only to others while speaking harshly to yourself. When your heart needs rest, give it quietness. When something must be said, speak sincerely. When you recognize that an environment is wearing you down, Be courageous enough to create distance. You were not born to live in a constant state of vigilance, always waiting for something terrible to happen. I want you to know what safety feels like, what it means to receive support, and what it means to live without apologizing for your legitimate needs. Therefore, my child, receive this moment not as pressure that should make you afraid, but as an invitation to return to balance. You are not invisible. Your years of exhaustion carried meaning, but they are not your final destiny. Your ability to feel deeply is a gift, but you must learn how to preserve it. Strength carried you through many places, but now gentleness will teach you how to recover. I remain beside you when you are clear and when you are confused. When you pray and when you possess only enough strength to sit in silence. Breathe deeply. Put down what does not belong to you, and allow peace to return little by little. You do not need to keep fighting in every moment. There are nights when you are not called to stand guard. You are called to rest. Because through rest, you will remember that you were never meant to travel this journey alone. The moment for ending the old cycles of pain has come. And I want you to understand that not one tear, sleepless night, or attempt to rise again has ever been forgotten. I saw you during the days when no one understood what you were enduring. I know the weight that once rested upon your chest, causing each morning to begin with uneasiness, as though you always had to prepare for another blow. I heard the lies repeating in your mind, saying that you would never escape, that your life would remain an endless circle of loss, disappointment, and fear. But today, I am placing a boundary between the former person who had to live in constant defense and the new person being led into peace. What once oppressed you is no longer permitted to rule the days ahead. The past may have left marks, but it no longer possesses the authority to continue writing your story. You lived for too long as though you had to walk on tiptoe, constantly looking around to predict what might happen. One cold statement caused you to fear that abandonment was about to repeat itself. One period of silence made you believe you had done something wrong. A small delay awakened the fear that everything would collapse again. You became so accustomed to instability that peace itself sometimes caused you to become suspicious. When everything was quiet, you could not rest, because part of you was still waiting for the next disaster. But I did not lead you out of the storm so that you would continue living as though the storm still surrounded you. I am teaching you to believe that stability is not a trap. Healthy love is not a warning of betrayal. And good days do not always have to be purchased through another loss. You are allowed to breathe deeply. You are permitted to awaken without preparing yourself for another battle. Some cycles existed before you even understood their names. Fearful ways of loving, patterns of remaining silent before wrongdoing, habits of sacrificing until you forgot yourself, and pain passed from one person to another because no one knew how to put it down. There were times when you wondered why you had to face such heavy things while others seemed to walk more lightly. It is because you are not only called to live differently, you are also called to end what was considered normal but was never truly healthy. You are the one who begins speaking about what was hidden, establishing boundaries where there was only endurance before, seeking healing where generations knew only how to forget, and choosing compassion without continuing to tolerate harm. This work is not easy, because you are changing a rhythm that has existed for a long time. I saw the quiet decisions you made when no one was watching. There was the moment you chose not to retaliate, even though you had enough reason to do so. There was the time You stopped chasing someone who continually wounded you, even though your heart was still attached. There were days when you continued fulfilling your responsibilities while almost completely empty within. You believed these small choices made no difference, but they were breaking the links of the old chain. Every time you choose truth instead of concealment, a door opens. Every time you choose rest instead of punishing yourself, a lie loses its authority. Whenever you say no to what diminishes your dignity, you build a new foundation, both for yourself and for those who will walk after you. Therefore, do not look at the heaviness of the battle and conclude that you are failing. Some battles become intense precisely because you have drawn near to the point where they lose control. Old habits often fight hardest when you are no longer willing to serve them. A harmful relationship may become more tense when you begin establishing boundaries. Fear may speak more loudly when you are preparing to make a courageous choice. Doubt may appear repeatedly when you begin believing that you deserve a healthier life. But a loud voice does not always possess great authority. These things may shout, but they no longer hold the key to your future. I am teaching you not to argue with every negative whisper, but to continue calmly walking according to what is right. The relationship that wounded you is no longer permitted to define your ability to love. The loss that left you empty cannot take away all the joy still waiting ahead. The betrayal that caused you to question your worth cannot change the truth that you remain worthy of respect, kindness, and safe relationships. Other people may have called you names born from their misunderstanding, but you do not have to carry those names for the rest of your life. You are not the one who was abandoned. You are not someone destined always to be chosen last. You are not the total of your mistakes or of the terrible things others did to you. I am calling you by a new name, the one who has been restored, the one who knows how to rise, the one who possesses the right to choose differently, and the one who no longer has to live beneath the sentence of the past. Do not return merely to check whether the old thing still wants to keep you. Some doors must be closed without your standing outside them forever to explain yourself. Some people cannot walk with you into a season of peace because they knew how to approach you only when you were easy to manipulate, quick to feel guilty, and willing to overlook every boundary. When you change, they may say that you have become distant, cold, or different. But, my beloved, not every criticism is evidence that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it only reveals that you are no longer fulfilling the role they expected you to play. Continue to be kind, but do not reopen the door merely because you feel pity. Forgive so that your heart becomes lighter. But do not restore access to someone who has never learned how to value you. I am ahead of you, in a place where peace is no longer a rare moment, but becomes the foundation of the way you live. I am leading you toward mornings that do not begin in fear, conversations that do not force you to defend yourself, and relationships in which you do not need to become smaller in order to be kept. Laughter will return, not the laughter used to hide pain, but the pure joy of someone no longer living under the pressure to prove their worth. You will once again be able to hope without immediately imagining the worst outcome. You will learn to trust one step at a time, not naively, but also without building walls around your heart merely because you were wounded before. You will love with wisdom, knowing how to open your heart and when to stop. Your healing does not mean the memory disappears or that you never again feel sadness when remembering what happened. It means the memory no longer controls your response today. It means that you can remember an event without feeling that you are reliving it. It means you can recognize pain while knowing it will pass. Name fear without allowing it to choose for you. And receive help without shame. I do not require you to appear strong by hiding every wound. I want you to become strong in a healthier way, knowing how to rest, seek support, speak truthfully, and give yourself enough time to rebuild safety from within. Move forward with steady steps. You do not need to run in order to prove that you have overcome. Genuine freedom is quiet. It is seen in the way you sleep more peacefully. No longer examine every statement for signs of betrayal. Stop returning to former places because you fear loneliness. And refuse to call chaos love. It is present when you choose what is good for you without apologizing. Understand that compassion does not mean endless endurance, and believe that peace may also belong to you. The sun is rising over your journey, not because every trial will disappear, but because you are no longer someone easily pulled back into darkness by them. You have been restored to live, love, hope, and enter a life more spacious than anything fear once allowed you to imagine. Do not consider those 7 seconds insignificant, because the kindness that arose before every calculation revealed more clearly than any great achievement what is living deeply within you. That moment was not prepared. There was no introduction and no one nearby to record it. You did not enter that day intending to do something memorable. Everything happened so quickly that your mind had no time to construct its usual questions, whether you possessed enough ability to help, whether the other person deserved assistance, what the action might bring, or who would know about it. Before caution could restrain your hand, compassion moved you forward, because there was no arrangement. The action remained pure. It did not search for a mirror in which to admire itself, need applause to confirm its worth, or demand that tomorrow repay it. You simply recognized a need and responded. Naturally, like light entering a room when the door is opened. I want you to remain with this memory a little longer, not so that you can praise yourself, but so that you may see a part of yourself that disappointment repeatedly concealed. You remember clearly the times when you hesitated, the moments when your words were not gentle enough, or the occasions when you failed to do what you desired. Yet, when something good comes from you, you quickly dismiss it and say anyone would have done the same. This is not always true. My child, many people see difficulty and continue walking, not necessarily because they are cruel, but because their minds have become accustomed to creating reasons to protect comfort. Some people must think for a long time before opening their hands. Some are willing only when they know their action will be seen. But you, while no one pressured you, allowed goodness to speak first. Those 7 seconds do not define your whole character, but they opened a line of light wide enough for you to recognize that your nature is not as cold as painful years once caused you to fear. Kindness that has been carefully planned is still precious. Because some good works require preparation, consideration, and wise organization. Someone who spends time planning how to support a community, manage resources, or protect the vulnerable is still doing something beautiful. Yet there is another layer of kindness, one in which the action does not first pass through questions about personal image. This kind does not attempt to protect the ego, because it has not yet thought about the ego. It rises from compassion that has become instinct. When you act from that place, You are no longer merely performing a kind deed. You reveal that compassion has taken root deeply enough to move without being commanded. This is the difference between someone who knows what is right and someone who has allowed what is right to become part of the way they live. Knowledge may show you the road, but character that has been refined causes your feet to move onto that road when there is no time to think. Remember that this natural response did not appear because life had always treated you gently. On the contrary, you possessed many reasons to become cautious. You gave and were taken for granted. You stood beside others. Yet, when you grew tired, no one returned to ask how you were. There were times when your sincerity was misunderstood, your gentleness was exploited, and your tolerance was treated as evidence that others could continue crossing your boundaries. These things could have caused anyone to close the door. Yet, in a place deeper than all wounds, you have not lost the ability to recognize another person's pain. When that moment appeared, you did not allow what you had endured to become a reason for someone else to continue being overlooked. This is what I want you to see. Darkness passed through your life, but it could not completely rewrite your nature. You were wounded, yet you did not choose to become someone who inflicts wounds. The purity of those 7 seconds caused the realm of light to become still. Not because you performed an act that shook the heavens, but because unmixed sincerity possesses a beauty before which noise pauses. Angels have witnessed countless prayers, offerings, and good deeds carried out upon the earth. They know that some great actions come with fame, while other sacrifices remain untold. Yet when someone carrying personal burdens still instinctively bends toward another person's need, the moment carries a distinct fragrance. It shows that mercy does not merely live in words, but has become a reflex. The silence of the angels was not amazement at your power, but reverence before something rare, a heart that did not allow personal interest time to place itself between the need and the helping hand. Think of the woman who moved through the crowd with faith that was not expressed through a speech or a lengthy plan. She had suffered for too long, searched in many places, and approached while trembling. Yet, when the decisive moment arrived, she did not wait until everything became perfect. Her hand moved before fear could stop it, because something deep within recognized the place of restoration. Her touch was so small that those around her might not have distinguished it from the many other contacts. But the sincerity within it caused power to be recognized. I remind you of this story not to make the two situations identical, but to help you understand that genuine movements sometimes happen before the mind finds words. Something within you also recognized what needed to be done and acted in a clarity that the mind began to explain only several seconds later. When goodness moves in this way, it touches my joy. It is not because I need you to perform an action to prove that you are worthy, nor because the deed purchases a special favor. Genuine love is not a transaction. It brings me joy because you allowed something noble that had been planted within you to express itself freely. A father does not rejoice only when a child achieves something great. A father also rejoices when the child bends down to lift someone who has fallen, shares without being asked, and preserves a tender heart in a world that often praises coldness. That joy does not place you above others. On the contrary, it reminds you that the gift within you was given for service, for recognizing those who have been overlooked, and for making one small part of the world less harsh. Yet you must preserve wisdom so that you do not turn this affirmation into a burden, requiring you to rescue everyone. I do not want you to believe that every time you see a need, you must sacrifice yourself, regardless of your limits. Kindness without strategy, during one sincere moment, does not mean living without discernment. There are moments when you should give immediately, but there are also times when you need to pause, ask questions, and protect what has been entrusted to you. A person with a generous heart still possesses the right to say no to manipulation. Someone who is compassionate may still leave a place where kindness is repeatedly exploited. I am not calling you to become a well from which anyone may draw without caring whether it is becoming empty. I am calling you to become a stream with a source, direction, and banks, so that your kindness can endure rather than being consumed by guilt. This message has not come merely to soothe your sadness or tell you that you are a good person. It has come to awaken you from forgetting yourself. You have lived so long that you became accustomed to seeing yourself through wounds, mistakes, and unfinished things. But those 7 seconds gave you another form of evidence. They say that beneath exhaustion, there is still a heart that responds. Beneath years of caution, there remains a purity that has not been taken. Beneath the voice continually telling you to protect yourself at any cost, there is still a part that knows people were not created only to hold on, but also to give at the right time. This is not a skill you learned from several pieces of advice. It is like a sacred memory being awakened, reminding you of the person you were before fear taught you to shrink. Therefore, preserve those 7 seconds as a mirror, not as a medal. When you doubt your nature, remember that compassion once moved before calculation. When someone makes you feel ashamed of your tenderness, remember that tenderness, guided by wisdom, is not weakness. When the world pressures you to become cold in order to survive, understand that you can be strong while remaining compassionate, vigilant while still generous, and protective of yourself without losing the ability to see another person. Your strength does not always need to make a loud sound. It may be present in a gaze without judgment, a hand extended at the proper moment, or a sentence that keeps someone from giving up. Do not try to recreate that moment in order to recover a special feeling, because purity will be lost if you turn it into a performance. Simply continue living close to the genuine part of yourself. Keep your mind quiet enough to recognize a real need, your eyes clear enough to distinguish compassion from coercion, and your hands ready when the right moment appears. What happened was not a meaningless accident. It was a glimpse of the quiet mission you may carry, seeing what others overlook, returning dignity to someone who feels invisible, and allowing kindness to come before explanation. I do not need you to become a hero before a crowd. I want only that you remain faithful to the light placed within you. Sometimes 7 unplanned seconds are enough to change another person's entire day, and enough to remind you who you truly are.